Hello, waffle lovers, and welcome to another episode of Whatever Flips Your Waffle here on 365sportscast.com. I'm your host, Mark Domeyer, coming to you as always from the bunker, deep in the heart of southern Minnesota. We're going to focus a lot on football this week, from high school to college to the pros, plus we have the Minnesota Twins straight in our vision as well. I'm glad you've decided to tune in and listen to the ramblings about Minnesota sports. Welcome both to those of you who tuned in previous weeks and to those of you checking things out for the very first time. I hope you'll enjoy your stay and will want to come back each and every Wednesday. If you have thoughts and comments, if you might want to be a guest, you can email me waffleflipper22@gmail.com or message me on Twitter at Mr. D 1973. Sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for another helping of waffles, syrup optional. After this brief commercial break, I'll be back with my interview for the week. This week, I talked to Marc Kruger, head football coach at NRHEG, about the background information that it takes to be a coach, the things that most of us never see. Stick around. Thanks to Brian Wayne and Wayne Farms for sponsoring the program this week. We've been looking at agriculture at times over the summer, thanks to the Wayne Farms initiative. And this time we want to talk about, it's a little ways off yet, but when the harvest season rolls around in another month and a half or so, just to keep our eyes out on the road, to be patient for our farmers. They got the big machinery, doesn't always go as fast as we might like, and sometimes takes up quite a bit of the road. But always, I know a lot of those guys really try to take back roads when they can, but occasionally they need to be out on the more traveled highways. But please be cautious and safe. Respect our farmers when they're out in the fields and all the hard work that they do in order to bring us all the wonderful things we have in our life, especially at the dinner table. Thanks to Brian Wayne and Wayne Farms. Please support our farmers. Joining the program this week on 365sportscast.com, I have New Richland, Harlan, Allendale, Geneva head football coach Marc Kruger. Marc, thanks for joining the program.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Marc has been here. This is his fifth year now as the head coach at NRHEG. And I want to start kind of at the end, and I'm going to come back to the beginning because that makes sense in my mind. At the end of a season, Marc, when you get to the end of the season, whenever that falls, how long is it before you start working toward your next season?
Usually one day.
One day, okay.
Sometimes, depending on the year, it might be the bus ride home. If it's been a tough year, it might be that bus ride home. I'm starting to think, all right, now next season, what does this off season have to look like? What does next season have to look like? What are we losing? What am I bringing in?
Right. So yeah, because what I think people don't always understand is when you are a varsity coach of any extracurricular activity, it's not like you show up on day one of practice and here we go. You're working throughout the off season from November till August.
It's full time. It's probably, if you ask my fiance, she'd say I probably think about football at least for 1 minute of every hour of every day.
At least, yeah. So don't ever figure out your hourly salary on that. That'd be depressing. So you're putting that all through the process, but there's not a lot you can do. There's nothing you can really do with your team except weight room type suggestions and stuff. But you have meetings with some of these guys after the season and stuff.
Yeah. So when the season ends, it's exit interviews. It's it's a team kind of communication on what's the off season look like, and then it's conversation with coaches on what worked, what didn't work, and what are we going to look for the next. And then we turn around, and then it turns into our off-season workout with the team, and then it's for the coaches, it's all the clinics and going all over the state and trying to learn different ways and how are other teams getting better and how can we get better.
Right, and it's, you mentioned who are you losing from year to year, who's coming in, and so then you're making adjustments, sometimes maybe even wholesale to how you're going to run an offense, how you're going to run a defense based on who you have this year.
Right. Yeah. If you've got one type of stud, you're going to change your offense to fit that stud, and then when he leaves, that offense might have to change because if you have a whole new group or whatever it comes out to, in my 5 years, I think our offense could be different every 5 years. Especially just a bystander, if you watched, you might think we have a whole new offense every single year.
Okay, and because you have some base formations and everything, and you have some plays that you rely on all the time and strategies, but like you say, you're going to mix it up. I've been watching high school football for a long time, and there are teams that would come in year after year and it was the same formations all the time. They weren't fooling you, and yet they were still successful. That's harder to do today, though.
I think it's much harder to do today to not only have your players buy in, we talk about that, especially some of the teams we play that have run the same offense for 20 years, to have your players buy in year out to run the same thing over and over again. And then there's also the flip side of, do you just go with whatever's flashy? Is that worth it? Or is it better to do what you know what works?
Right. So you look, for example, down the road to Blooming Prairie, who's had extended success for a couple decades now, and Coach Chad Gimbel, and the spread formation and everything else, they throw a lot at you, and they're starting that in junior high. They have kids running these types of things, and that's probably part of the process too, even working with your junior high coaches to get some of the elements of what you're probably going to be running.
Yeah, the biggest, so,
consistently.
What I do is I take our varsity playbook and then I cut it down to the bare bones of what it can be, and that's what our junior high does. So they're using a lot of the same verbiage, a lot of the same formations, and a lot of the same plays, just less of what we do. So as they just get older, it's just adding to what they have.
Right.
Like our biggest plays, our best hitters, we're trying to run with our junior high kids too, so that at 7th grade they know how to run whatever play it is that I know I want to run in 3 years, 4 years with them.
Yeah. And there's only so much they can handle at that point anyway, before it becomes too overwhelming.
Right.
And
Yes, it has to be a little bit more simplified for that group.
Right. There's a lot of been talk over the last number of years about preparing kids even for junior high, and some areas have gone away from the contact as much prior to 6th and 7th grade. But I know we have guys playing up in Owatonna and stuff too. Is there a right way to do this to get kids ready?
I don't think there's a right way. I think it really depends on the kid, especially at that age. When you look at, if you just take a 5th grader, there's some 5th graders that probably could play with 8th graders.
Yeah, right.
And there's some 5th graders that they won't be able to play with 8th graders till they're a junior in high school.
Right.
So it really depends on the kid and the family. So I think, if you think your kid is ready to play football and you want to do it, do it. If you're hesitant on it, then it might be better to try to wait for a little bit. If you look at our school, it's our 5th and 6th graders will play tackle football with Owatonna leagues. Our 3rd and 4th, they wear pads. Technically, it's tackle football, but it's not quite the same. Definitely not the same level of hitting as they go up. And then almost every school, 7th and 8th grade, it turns out, and it's pretty much tackle football right now.
It's lace them up and here we go by 7th grade. When you get to summer then and you have some more contact with your players, what does that program look like?
So our summer always starts with what's called 7-on-7, and that's essentially touch football. Or take the offensive line out, take the defensive line out, take the tackling out, and really it's just passing.
Okay.
So it's working on getting our formations down and really getting our quarterback and wide receiver the timing down.
Okay.
And we do that really all of June, and that's especially our school, I leave it at that, and that's when like basketball and wrestling they use June as their main time. So I try to leave June alone as much as I can. I think we have 5 days in June that we do anything.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and it is hard. It's so hard to balance summer. When I was growing up, summer was baseball and maybe an open gym for basketball, and that was it. And now, all the sports, once they opened it up to coaches having contact, and you have to. If you don't, and you're not successful,
and if you're not working, the other team is. The team you're going to play week 1, they're probably doing something over the summer, and if you're not, you're going to be able to tell that on week 1.
Right. You guys have been going up to Bemidji in the summer too. What led you to that? What's great about that?
My connection there is the school I was at before, Deer River. They go up there, so I knew it was a nice camp. And then for us, it's really nice. It's a 5-6 hour drive, so it's kind of a chore to get up there. But when we're up there, we don't play any teams we'd see. So you don't have to worry about someone figuring out your new wrinkle on offense because no one's gonna have an idea. All the teams we play up there are from way up north. We wouldn't see them until the state tournament if we would. And then the coaching staff at Bemidji State, I really respect. They run a great camp, and they're building a really great program up there.
And sometimes hearing some of the same things you might teach from a different voice just has a different impact.
And that's really, we'll have have our team meeting after that camp, and it's almost every time someone says, well, they were having us do it like you do it. I'm like, well, yeah, I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But I guess you had to have that Division II coach tell you too, and now you realize I do know what I'm talking about when I'm trying to tell you how to do something.
Right. And it gives your players exposure to what college coaches are expecting for the potential that you have some guys who might go on and play at the next level.
Yeah. And being at that camp, they do different combines, and they'll coaches always, they'll either ask me what players I think can play, or they'll kind of look at our team as we practice or play and point out different players and ask more about them and just getting good exposure for them.
Right, which is fantastic. So now you get to August, you give them a little time off between that, kind of that rest and recuperation, and here we go. But when you're sitting down with your coaching staff to plan out like the first couple of weeks, the preseason, the practice, when are you starting to do that? When are you the type that goes, we're going to go here's minute by minute, or just here's the general concepts of what we're doing?
Our practice plan goes by 5-minute increments, so every 5 minutes I know what we're doing, and that might be we do something for 15 minutes, so I have it down for 3 of the slots, but however it goes. So I don't want to do anything for too long, and it's, we kind of have a formula on how stuff works. We like to install all of our plays at first, so it's that first week when you can't have too much contact. That's when we stand around the most and talk about how a play goes, and then we just start to add to it as we go, and then start to add more, start to add special teams, all that stuff as we go through.
Because things have changed a lot, even since you played football in high school, where you probably went through two-a-days all the time. It was hot, it didn't matter. You guys were out there. Now there's a lot of things in place for the safety of the players.
Yeah, there's so many rules to follow. I have to keep up with it every summer. That's part of the job too, is to read how the rules have changed, what I'm allowed to do, what I'm not allowed to do. There's 5 levels of contact we're allowed for practice.
Wow.
Like right now we're on level 2, I think. So it kind of depends on like how hard you can hit, if you can tackle to the ground, if it's thud, if you can use pads or not. And then 2-a-days have gone away. You can do every other day. So we do 2-a-days twice, and the other 3 days of the week is just one practice.
Okay.
I used to, when I was in college, we had 3-a-days.
Oh, geez.
And now we're down to every other day, 2-a-days in high school. And I was not in the realm, but I do know my head coach in high school, he coached when they would say, you're not allowed to have water, you didn't work hard enough. So there was, that's not that long ago to the point we are right now with how much things have changed.
Yeah, and it could be 90 degrees out, as it often is in August. And you guys do more in the morning too, just to, it's a fresh time and it's not too blazing.
We like to go in the morning. And the other thing, we have so many kids that they work full-time jobs, that they'll come, we'll practice, they're out of here by 9:30, 10 o'clock, they go to their job, and then our 2-a-day day, they come back at 6:30, have another football practice, go home, go to bed, and then do it all again the next day.
And that's another thing that's changed too. We had jobs in high school, but when the season started, like a lot of us just worked weekends or whatever, but now kids are, it's a very different world today. And so the evening is more of the second practice. They have a lot of downtime instead of just have lunch and come back out there.
Yeah, and even a lot of times it's just a helmet. It's usually a lot of walkthrough stuff, but just taking advantage of, I get X amount of hours a week, I want to use it. And we really set it up, our first 2 weeks of practice with our 2-a-days, we basically have 3 weeks worth of practice in that time.
Okay.
So I think that makes that's a big edge for us, is in 2 weeks, we're 3 weeks. We're at a point of being 3 weeks
All
in.
right. We've got Marc Kruger, head coach of the NRHEG football team. We're talking about preparation for coaches, something people don't think about a whole lot. When you talked about having to keep up with the rules, and there's things that the Minnesota State High School League requires you watch the videos and you take the tests and everything. But the things that you gain at these clinics that you go to as well, how many of these do you try to attend in the off season?
I do at least 3 clinics a year. So it ranges from like Hamline University has a 1-day clinic that year there, couple sessions, have lunch, one more session and go home, to we do our coaches put on one, and then Glacier is a big nationwide organization, and both of those are 3-day clinics. So you're staying at the hotel, and it's sometimes it's set up so like you're up there with your coaches. We have our hotel room. We go to go to your meetings, learn different things, and come back together, share what we think, share how you think it would work or why it doesn't work. And sometimes it's a dud. Sometimes being from Minnesota, I can think of going to a Georgia high school when he was talking about all their off-season prep, because they get their guys for 2 hours a day every 3 days, and they have 75 seniors that play football.
Oh, wow.
It just sometimes it's like, well, that doesn't apply to anything I'm trying to do.
No.
And then there's some other great ones, and it's I look at it as everything. I just want to get one thing from a clinic, and that just might be maybe it's a slogan that maybe that's all I get, and if I get that, that's great. Right. Or if it's formations, or if it's plays, or just an idea on how to think about a play too, could be kind of something there too.
Okay, you mentioned the slogans, and we'll transition here a little bit into team building. What struck me a lot in your time here is you have like the count on me.
Yeah.
That's kind of the mantra of this team.
That's our big one. That's every year we have a sign outside our locker room. You touch that sign. We say it before every game. We say it at every practice. We say it on the hallways. We say when I walk by, if I just said count, the players say on me.
Right.
I mean, it's ingrained. It started, when I came here, I had a great senior class that first year who bought in, and ever since then, everyone's bought
Yeah.
in. So that's our big one. That's the main number one is count on me, and that really comes down to counting on me, in practice, in games, in school, doing the right thing in community, not going out partying, not doing any of that stuff. So it's not just counting on me to know the play, it's counting on me to pass my
Right.
classes, to not get in trouble, not do the wrong things to.
Yeah. And even the cheerleaders have kind of gotten that where they get the crowd involved with that.
I love that. I love that. It's not just a football team. I love that other people kind of buy into it too.
Right. You talk about community, and so it builds that school community. And you know what I've noticed in high school sports in recent years is there are fewer and fewer students who show up to games, and you'd love to have that. You want to have that support, even if you're not a football fan. Come and support your classmates and everything else for what they're doing. Because if you're in band or drama or whatever, maybe they'll come and watch you.
Yeah,
you know,
and everyone that's doing whatever their program they're in, they're working hard at it.
Yeah,
and they deserve that recognition. And for the band. For the pep band that comes to play for football, I make sure to go to a band, and we hopefully get our players to go to a band concert or two throughout the year, and definitely thank them for coming and supporting us like that.
Yeah. So the count on me, and then you have some each year. You kind of have a different.
Yeah, we have a yearly slogan
too.
each year too.
And where did this idea come from? I mean, we see colleges do stuff like that and everything, but
so count on me. I had in high school, so we touched the banner too, and that's something that I don't know if it stuck with everyone that went to my high school, but it stuck with me. It stuck with me for sure. And then the yearly slogan is just something that I think makes sense. It's instead of when you do our logo for the year, instead of putting 2022, we put we before me. So that kind of tells it that year that was the focus. And sometimes it's based on how did last year go and what needs to change. That might be how the slogan goes. It might be sometimes it's something I heard someone say and it really resonates. Like my very first year was don't quit till zero, and that was just because Stephon Diggs had a game-winning touchdown catch against the Saints. And at the ESPY Awards, he talked about not quitting till zero. And I was like, I like that.
Right.
And that became it. It was it was sometimes it's simple as that, and sometimes it's something like, I think maybe the past year was really tough and we got to fix how we're doing something, so now we have a slogan that means a lot more. And some years I have a slogan ready the day after the season ends, and some years it's not quite till we get a little bit closer to the season.
Right. I'm going to have to go watch that highlight of Stephon Diggs. It never gets old watching him score that touchdown against New Orleans in the playoffs. So, and the kids are buying in.
Yes.
I hear this, and what struck me a couple weeks ago, Wyatt Grosskreutz was on the program talking about rehabbing his injuries and his hope to be back. He's got some timelines where he hopes to be back, but constantly in our interview, I heard him talk about going to the weight room and we are getting better and we are doing this. And that pronoun usage of we, I mean, Wyatt's a guy, he's bought in from day one.
Yeah.
And that's what strikes me of when I hear the players say those things, even when we're not even talking about that stuff.
Yeah. And Wyatt's one, he was just announced as captain today.
Awesome.
He'll be a captain of the team, and he was integral in we before me. He might have been the first player I said, I think this might be our slogan next year. And instantly his face on him is like, yeah, that should be the slogan. We before me, we as a team. And that's what we just talked about at practice, half hour ago is, right now we're looking great. We're a we team right now. And if we keep that, I think we're gonna have a great year.
Yeah, right. When you and I want to ask you this too, so I'm gonna segue again a little bit. We look at a kid like Wyatt, and he's hurt and he won't be back until maybe sometime in September, beginning of October, hopefully. But he's on the sidelines, and I'm sure he's helping and he's coaching and everything else like that. Do you see in a kid like that, hey, here's the potential where this could be somebody who coaches down the line?
I am already penciled Wyatt in. I hope he comes and coaches with me one day.
Okay.
I think he has a good chance to play college football. Kind of depends on what he does decide to do in college, and I can see that happening. I can see it. I mean, he's a great kid. I think we can agree you could see a lot of things happening for him. But yeah, there's definitely a couple of players you just know, like, I think you're going to coach one day, and I think you're going to make a good coach. And there's, other players that they do what you tell them to do, and that's because that's all they know. So you kind of know they probably aren't going to make it as a coach type thing.
Right.
But definitely there's some players that and I've got some that have graduated I've already talked to that are looking forward to when they graduate. They want to either be a volunteer, if they can, get in that realm, they would love to coach too.
Yeah. How do we develop, because this is a program in all sport, our problem in all sports is we just don't have enough people who want to coach. How do we, encourage these young people and others to kind of pursue that path?
And I think it really comes down to, I coached because I had great coaches. So I think you got to take it on yourself to be that mentor. You have to take it on yourself that it means a lot to me if I had any players that were coaching. I think that would be a huge thing if I could say, I know this guy is coaching at whatever high school, because I had an impact on him. Same thing with even young coaches I bring in, as long as they're staying. I've starting to have a coaching tree now. I think it's kind of, I don't want to be egotistical, but I do think it's kind of cool that the idea of, a player that played for you and coaches, or coach that coached for you and coached, and you have to be able to be a mentor. You have to be a positive person, and you have to make sure the game is fun in every realm.
Right.
So it can't just be fun because you play it. It's got to be fun. The whole thing is fun. The idea of watching film to figure stuff out can't be a chore. It has to be something you care about doing. So if you're a coach, I don't get to play football anymore.
Yeah.
I talk to the guys, and we'll talk. We have a rule when they go to the county fair, they're allowed one greasy food a day because they're trying to stay healthy.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I don't have that rule because I don't get to play under the lights. It doesn't matter if I'm healthy. So kind of some things like that, but you have to love the game so much that you don't have to play to love it still. You just want to be around the game.
A lot, as a former coach and also as an official, a lot of us talk sometimes about, you get to that point, I can't play anymore. How can I still be invested in the game that I love? And coaching is one way. One of my fondest memories is when my daughter played basketball here and played for Coach Annika Peterson, who I coached back in the day. And that's just kind of a cool, here's somebody that played for me, worked hard, now she's coaching, and I have every confidence because I see some of the things that she maybe gained, going through the program.
Just to see that advancement, that skill gain and development.
Right. One of the things we see with coaches leaving the profession stuff is they have issues with parents. You're a communicator. I assume that's how you kind of, if there's, parents will complain at some point, but you just communicate.
Yes.
To try to take care of any issues.
And I've been extremely fortunate. I've not had any issues since I've been here for 5 years for sure. It's been rare for me so far, and I think just getting out ahead of it been the biggest thing. Is I communicate on how I want to talk about things like that, if it's playing time or discipline, how that goes, and I have certain rules, like I don't answer the phone after 9 o'clock at night.
Right.
I'm not talking about playing time at 10 p.m. It just won't happen. And I don't talk about playing time unless the player talked first. Because that was one of the biggest things I saw right away is there's parents that wanted their kid to play more, but that kid knew he wasn't going to play more because he didn't work hard enough.
Yeah.
And he was fine with it.
Yep.
But the parent wasn't. And that's just a no-win situation because the kid's not going to work hard enough to play, but the parent's mad at the coach for not playing.
Right.
So just the communication has to happen for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Marc Kruger is with us on Whatever Flips Your Waffle, head coach of the NRHEG Panther football team. Football season is right around the corner. We're kind of getting there. You talked about the levels of contact and everything. So when are you at level 5? I mean, how soon before your first game, which is a Thursday night this year?
It is. So next week. So we go a full week before any actual full contact. The next week in practice, you can't actually. Level 5 is full contact. You're not really supposed to do that in practice.
Okay.
But you can do that we have a scrimmage next Saturday. So we're 4, which is wrap up thud and just try not to go to the ground.
Right.
Essentially is what we're at for contact level next week. And then really, as a philosophy as a coach, we never go full contact.
Okay.
I think of it as I don't want injuries. Like I hate to see an injury in practice.
Mm-hmm.
That just seems awful to me. And I also think as a team, when I hold everyone back from going full contact, we hit that much harder come Friday night or Thursday night.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to ask is that doesn't, I haven't seen that impact, on game night. They're still hitting, they're still, I don't think it hurts. And everybody's under the same rules anyway, to some degree. But even the pros, they're very limited in what they do.
Yeah.
And the injury part of that is, that is the worst thing in the world when your own teammates hurts you.
Yeah. And I do think I see other teams that go more contact in the year, weekly practice, and I see they have a player that played Friday against, whoever, and then when they play us, they're not playing. And it probably happened in practice. And
right.
It's rare for us. And I think that's huge. And I do think for as little contact we have in the week, we're still one of the hardest hitting teams in the district, and that makes a big difference.
Right. And there's so much more safety, like helmets have come a long way for preventing concussions and things like that. And it's really just technique. If you tackle the right way, you should avoid those types of...
It's all technique where you put everything, and it shouldn't happen. And a helmet can't guarantee you won't get a concussion, but it's definitely a better helmet than even when I played.
Yeah.
I remember the water bladder type helmets
right.
and the styrofoam inside the helmets to what we have now is just completely different.
Yeah. You've had some turnover in your coaching staff this year. Longtime assistant coach Dewey Ferber has retired from coaching after 30-some years of doing it. So I've tried to convince him he should come up in the booth with me and hang out and give me a word of the game all the time. But now you transitioned in new coaches. That's just as much of a teaching process.
It is.
Too, to kind of get them built up on the program.
It is. And I was fortunate. One of our coaches been with me for 5 years, went from JV offense to now varsity defense, but he's been around for 5 years, so it's an easy transition, and a couple new coaches joining the program. But yeah, it's and that was big for our clinics, just spend time together, talk about how things are going to change. And when you go to the team camp in Bemidji, it's as much as it is the players getting ready, it's coaches getting ready.
Okay.
It's, I'm playing calling, and I'm not necessarily play calling for, maybe a scrimmage, it's 3rd and 3, but I might be calling a play because I really want to see how this goes against this look and different things like that. And it's, I need to get my play calling down. It's, I think it's kind of a skill that you build as you go throughout the year, and you go throughout and you go all off season without calling plays. You kind of have to build that back up, just like the football players have to build their skills back up too.
Well, it's just like if you're the quarterback and you don't pick up that football at any time until summertime, it'll show, just like any sport.
Yes.
Coaching is much the same way, and so like you say, your play calling when you get to October is probably different than it was at the beginning, because you got a really good feel for what your guys can do.
Yeah.
And you've built up and seen a lot of film on what other teams are doing and game plan. So when you're game planning, you guys play on a Thursday night, a Friday night, and when do you start planning for the night? Right away, watching film and stuff like that, kind of putting a game plan together.
A typical week, so you play that Friday, you get film uploaded and set usually by Saturday morning, hopefully. I watch our game Friday night after we play. I don't fall asleep until I watched the game. So, and sometimes the computer's not working, so I'm staying up till 3 a.m., but I can't sleep unless I watch the game.
Right.
So that's my first thing, is I watch the game Friday night. Saturday I get film going, and that's usually kind of the family day. I try to not do too much film on that. And then it's Sunday afternoon. If the Vikings are playing well, I watch the Vikings. If they're not, I start film.
Okay.
Usually at halftime if it's a bad game. And it's watching our film, seeing what went well, and then I start looking at what can I get on the other team's film. We get their last game for sure, and then if I can find anything else online, I watch that. And I just starting building up a scouting report, building up their tendencies. What do you know they do? What do I expect them to do? Especially if, the hardest one is when you're playing a team that just played a team that looks nothing like you.
Right.
If they run an offense with 3 running backs and we run spread, I don't know what their defense is going to do, because their defense will look different depending on what, the formations. So it's, trying to guess, a lot of guesswork in that, and it's, hopefully educated guesswork to figure out what you think the other team's going to do. And then Monday is when we turn around, and that's when we present everything to the players and try to take my hours and hours of film watching and get into a 30-minute thing for them, because they can't sit and watch hours of film like I can.
Probably parts of it, so that they, especially their own of, hey, here's what you did here. So you mix that a little bit, some of your own, some of the other teams.
Yeah, we start with a little bit of our own, and kind of depends on the game. If it was a great game, we don't watch a ton of film because we don't have a lot to fix.
Right.
And if it was a awful game, sometimes we don't watch it either because it's too much to fix, or it's it's just things didn't work, so we're going to go back to the drawing board and forget about it.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of that middle ground of you might have won, but you won by a touchdown, and there's some things we could have done. Then it might be a little bit more film on that last game.
All right. So when you look at the first game of the season, hardest to game plan for, because
definitely the hardest.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you may have some idea, especially if it's the same coach. And
we'll get film of their scrimmage, and we'll send film of our scrimmage.
Okay.
Which and last year the film of the scrimmage I got, their camera wasn't working, so it was from a phone from a person standing behind the running back.
Oh.
So I don't know. I didn't know any formations.
Yeah.
I did know they lined up with one running back, and I knew they ran the ball some.
Okay.
And that's what we knew of their offense going into the game.
Well, I think of how far we've come. When I was in high school, I filmed the football team because I didn't play. So on the road, I would be up in the crow's nest filming and stuff. And I always wondered, well, I was sure they showed that, but that's the old VHS cassettes and stuff. You weren't sending that down the road to other teams. That was a different world too to prepare, and it's a little easier now because you have that access.
Yeah, I mean now we use Huddle. We go online and I send it, and so I send my film, they send their film. They can't look at my film until they send their film anyway, so you can't look early. My first year's coaching, it was DVDs, but the coaches would call each other up and they would pick a town about halfway between the two, and they would drive, meet, trade DVDs, and drive home. So that'd be their Saturday morning, was
that could be hard,
driving an hour or two, or
you
depending on, especially small schools, you've got some pretty far away games.
Yeah. I mean, when you're playing a Mayor Lutheran, that's a long ways off, and boy, if you're up north, some of those trips.
Yes. So I'm very, very fortunate that we've got all the online for me now. I've never had to do the exchange of DVDs
Right.
or VHSs.
Drive down the road and do that. These Thursday, do you have 2 Thursday night games this year?
Thursday, yeah.
First one, and then the second one I thought isn't too bad because that's a Thursday night, and then the next week is when you play Wednesday.
Yep, and as a district, we planned that. That was
Okay.
We've been wanting to change, because what'll happen is we'll play that Thursday, and then next week play Wednesday because of our MEA break, that
Right.
Thursday, Friday off, and the week after we play Tuesday for playoffs.
Yep.
So really, it develops a great way to kind of keep us on a schedule, as opposed to go Friday, Wednesday, Tuesday. That kind of just gets to be a bit of a drag, especially when you got a small school with guys playing both ways.
Right, yeah, because that is going to change how you prepare for the game. You have one
one
less
less
day
day.
and the recovery time and everything too, especially late in the season.
Yep.
It is kind of hard to do, but okay. So I know some of the games were being moved, and we had to move last year, like a game to Saturday because of officiating. We have shortages there.
And we have no guarantee, we still might have to move some. There might be, we're not 100% sure we have all the officials. We're pretty sure we're all good, but there still could be some changes as we need officials that bad.
We do. And watching you on the sideline, I don't see you get real upset or after the officials too much. If you do, boy, we know something really was off, and I've seen that a few times. But you're treating the officials with respect because they got a job to do, and they're not perfect.
Yep.
And that's why we have an off switch on my microphone up in the booth, because we see that they're not perfect sometimes too, but they do the best they can.
They do, and I make a point, and if I go too far, I apologize. I think as a staff, we've always been pretty good. I gotta go. One time I was a little too mad, and it is what it is, and I apologize as soon as I could. And I think that's something, I think as a coach, I have to set an example, because if I'm going to belittle the officials, I can't get mad at my players for doing it.
Right.
They're going to do what I do. So when I show them respect, I expect my players to show them respect too.
And the reality of nobody wants a 15-yard penalty either, because if you're mad, it could be a crucial part of the game. But yeah, we do need those officials, and we always try to encourage these younger guys too to do that too.
Yes.
Be part of the game. You make good money doing it, and you still get to be part of the game.
And that's after our Saturday game last year. That's the first thing I said in film is, hey, we played on Saturday because we didn't have officials for Friday. So you seniors or you guys when you graduate, think about that. There's people going to be younger that might have to play Saturdays or Thursdays because you don't have officials, or you could become officials and you can help with that. Or when my kids complain about officials, I hope you better become an official then.
Yeah.
If you're going to complain that they didn't do a good enough job, I hope you replace them.
Yeah.
I hope you take that upon yourself to learn how to be an official and do that, because it sounds like you think you do a good job of it if you're going to complain about how bad they were.
Yeah. Well, I know working with young umpires, I hear that a lot of, I'm never going to complain about an umpire again.
Yep.
This is hard. Yeah, it's hard in any sport.
Yeah.
And I know, hey, if they ever want to come back, Dan Stork, our AD, is always looking for officials. Start at the younger levels.
Yep.
Start at junior high, work with the middle school levels, and you learn a lot. And they even let guys like me do it. So anybody can do it. Marc Kruger is with us. We're talking NRHEG Panther football, and I want to look at the season here too. We got some transition, and yet it's what you always hope for. You have some people coming back that are really key parts of your team. And then there are other parts, like quarterback, where things are changing due to graduation.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We have a few 3- and 4-year starters coming back. We talked about Wyatt earlier. Wyatt's going to be a 4-year starter on our offensive line. As a freshman,
Unreal.
he was starting at offensive line where all the biggest, strongest players play. We had to put him out there as a freshman. So, and that's that's why I think he's going to be a great coach. He's got so much experience there, and he's a coach right now. He's hurt, so he's as much a coach as anyone, I think, because he knows the blocking scheme as well as any other person on the team.
Yeah, and the kids relate to him.
They do
very well.
Yeah, and then Andrew Phillips, a 3-year starter at running back, played a little bit as a freshman too. That's a nice thing to bring back. And then it turns into, we also have a sophomore quarterback who's never played varsity before, kind of stepping in. So it's definitely a mix of experience and some young guys who I think can step up.
Right, and You probably lean on the running game a little bit more when you have a younger quarterback. You have the size up front.
We do.
To block, and Andrew is a special talent at running back too, and he's not allowed to go play college football though, of course, because he's going to play college baseball. But you still have to have passing. You have to keep defenses.
You have to keep them honest. You have to be able. You have to be. You have to have both. You can't rely on one. As a coach, I've always kind of been a 50-50 guy. I think you should run 50%, pass 50%. That might change, especially if you've got a better running back. But we've also seen ourselves. We probably pass more than most teams in the area, just being small schools. We've been blessed with quarterbacks. In my years, I've had 3 different quarterbacks, all who can really throw the ball well.
Yeah.
And this will be my 4th, I think.
Right, and having receivers too that can get open, and the confidence of your quarterback to throw the ball and know his guy's going to go get it. That's key too, because you got to have that speed out there and working hard. So
we left Bemidji, our team camp, and the coaches we were talking like, we're really fast, we're really big, we're really strong. That's all. That's a lot of the things we need for football. We're really excited about how the season's going to go because you keep looking at what we have, and I was a little worried coming in because I thought we lost a lot, but just the players that we bring back and the players stepping up into positions at the size we have and the speed we have. It's hard to say you're the biggest team and the fastest team. That usually doesn't happen. I think we might match up and be the biggest and the fastest a lot this year. Okay.
Defensively, any big changes, or you're having some of the same ideas there, but personnel's a little different.
Defensively, especially with Coach Ferber retiring, we've changed more this year than any other year. A lot of new fronts. As an offense, our idea was to have a lot of formations, and I've kind of decided that to be our defense too. We should have a lot of fronts, so we run the same defense. We just look different every time. Okay. And that really can help us. Player A is still going to whatever spot, but he's lining up at a different spot, so it's a different path to get there. But everyone knows what they're doing still. It's just the offense. It's going to be a lot harder for the offense to know what we're going to do.
Oh, okay. And like you said, with Coach Fox moving into that role as calling defense, and he knows these kids and he knows their abilities really well from all his time in the program too. I always like to touch on the things that people don't always think about, but you also graduated your kicker in Ben Shanerock.
Not only our kicker, a 4-year starter at kicker.
Yes.
I have never had he's the only kicker I've ever had as a varsity coach.
Right. And so to replace that is important. It's part of the process.
It's a huge thing, especially when we're doing tryouts every day, trying to figure out Ben was our kicker, our punter, our field goal kicker. So that's all in one spot, and to be honest, the guy I thought was going to do it actually got hurt. So not only is he gone, his backup is gone. So it's kind of go right back to the drawing board, and we've played around, and I've played around with some rugby style kicks and different things like that, and might be going for 2 a lot more this year, maybe not kicking field goal. We had a kicker who he could kick a 30-40 yard field goal.
Right.
We did. We were a small school that could kick field goals. That's kind of rare in Minnesota.
And it changes how you play the game, changes the strategy. For years and years, way long ago, Maple River would have kids. I watched a kid kick a 48-yard field goal to beat us as time expired one year, and I thought, this isn't high school football.
Yep.
But it changes how you, 4th and 2 on the 15, you can maybe go out there and kick a field goal instead of,
Or even, that 3rd and 6, now I'm going to look at 3rd and 6, so I just need to get 3 yards because I'll go for it on 4th and 3. Whereas, before I'd be like, well, I'm going to go for a touchdown because they're expecting me, and just some different things like that where, you might not have that in your back pocket to be able to kick it, but maybe that helps you be more aggressive.
Okay. Maybe we have to check if any of our kids play on the Waseca soccer team and come down and do a little kicking.
I have already looked.
Okay. Of course. So when you look at, still can't use saying district. You look at that, do you count us among the favorites? Who else is going to be really good in our district?
I think Blooming set themselves apart. You can't not look at them as a favorite. And you look at GFW, they went my first year, they had their first win in 6 years, and now they're a perennial state team.
Right.
I've kind of been fortunate to watch them grow. They're going to be a solid team, and St. Clair who beat us in the playoffs, I think they'll be a pretty good team as well. So that kind of comes our district. And I do think we're right in the mix with all of that, especially with what we have right now. Just hard not to say Blooming's a favorite when they won the district last year. They've won state. They won their top program.
Yeah.
And then with the district, they also have the section, and then you have a Maple River or a rival who we don't play in the season, but to get to state, you got to play them in the playoffs.
Right.
They'd be another favorite too.
Right. So strong teams around us too.
Very strong.
But you figure and as the goal always, the first goal is we want to win as many games as we can. Let's earn a home playoff game.
Yep.
First goal, let's play at home,
Yes.
not have to go on the road. And we can look forward to hopefully doing that. I'd much rather go to 5 or 6 home games
Yep.
in the season
Much rather that.
than only 4.
Really, one of my biggest goals is, especially in the state of Minnesota, how we set up our playoffs. I view section championships as extremely meaningful. I want to win as many section championships as I want, because I think all 8 teams that go to state, that's a huge achievement.
Right.
It's pretty rare to get to say you went to state.
Yeah.
And obviously I want to win a state tournament, but my number one goal, let's win a section championship.
Yep.
Let's win those. Let's be the best in our area, and we'll play with the best of the best and see where we're at.
Right.
from
And you
there.
were able to do that your first season here, and for a team that since the consolidation of our district had never been to state, it was fantastic for everybody here, and we hope that we can celebrate many
right.
more of those
Hopefully.
down the stretch. Marc Kruger, NRHEG head football coach, thanks for joining us this week on the program.
Thank you.
And now it's time for the State of Minnesota Sports. Last week I brought up the Minnesota Golden Gophers football program briefly, and Coach PJ Fleck continues to get his team ready for their September 1st debut at home. Pleased to tell you that we'll have a guest on next week to give us a full preview of Gopher football in depth and everything you want to know about the Golden Gophers' chances in the Big Ten this season. Last week we had Trey Wicks on. We talked about the Vikings pretty extensively and looked at their first preseason game. Well, the second preseason game against the San Francisco 49ers, not nearly as fun to watch. Even though the Vikings had lost against the Raiders, you saw signs of life. You saw things from Kellen Mond that maybe he was ready to take hold of the backup quarterback position. We saw some things from some of these guys like a Ty Chandler who did really well. And about the only person who was a little bit more, well, there were 2 guys that were kind of consistent when it came to the Vikings' second preseason game. One was Asamoah, and he did a nice job in there again, making some plays from the linebacker position. And other than, him being out there and hoping for some things from, those backup quarterbacks, wasn't a lot to be excited about. And in fact, the Vikings went out and got a new backup quarterback, traded for Nick Mullins from the Raiders, gave up a 7th-round draft pick. Who cares? That's probably not the end of the world, 7th-round type of a thing. Nick Mullins comes in, and it would sure seem to be the idea that, hey, he's here because he's going to be the backup quarterback. We've seen Sean Mannion. He was never the answer. We saw that last year against the Packers when he was forced into duty when Kirk Cousins had COVID. Kellen Mond, maybe someday. I mean, he regressed a lot. He made some poor throws. And, if you were watching the game or listening to the game, it sure seemed like Paul Allen was trying to hype up, the idea that that was a really tough throw that he made there. No, these were throws that professional quarterbacks should make in the NFL, and so goody for him if he made it, because he's supposed to make those throws. But 2 really bad interceptions from Mond, and just a lot of difficulty. Now, again, 49ers, a better defense, perhaps than the Raiders, even though they didn't have the starters out there playing. The teams had done their joint practices throughout the week, and that's when the starters were out there, really doing things and getting their work in. But still, you kind of expected to see something, from Mond, even after that. Again, you don't have the guys you would normally count on, to be able to throw the ball to run the ball. Obviously, having Delvin Cook and having Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen makes a big difference. But at the end of the day, you're still playing against people who are probably on the same level as you. If all the second string guys are in there, you should at least be able to do something against them, because if you can't against them, what are you going to do if you're thrown into a game situation. So Nick Mullins comes over. We'll see if he plays in the final preseason game against Denver. I suppose it'll depend. He's familiar with the system a little bit. He's been in San Francisco and in Cleveland, and he's kind of got an understanding of this offense. I would guess the Vikings would like to throw him out there just to kind of confirm this is going to be our guy. Now we'll see what happens with Mannion and with Mond. If you're going to cut them, if you're going to keep 3 quarterbacks, would they be able to make it through waivers and put like a Kellen Mond on the practice squad? That'd be a good place for him just in case. He has that kind of thing. Who knows? I mentioned 2 players that really stood out consistently, and Asamoah was one. T.Y. McGill is the other. There's a name you really hadn't heard much. Here's a guy who defines journeyman player. He's been all over the place over his 8 years in the league, but he continues to kind of be a force defensively, and he's got a bunch of sacks, 3.5 sacks now in 2 preseason games. That's pretty good. And again, you're not playing against all the starters. Although in the first preseason game, some of the starting offensive line for the Raiders. So McGill is out there trying to make names, say, hey, I want to be part of this thing. He wasn't on anybody's radar when it comes to in the preseason that here's a guy who can make this roster, but maybe he is now. Maybe he's showing the coaching staff the right things. But it's so hard to tell from preseason games. You look at this. Albert Wilson catches 2 touchdown passes in the first preseason game against the Raiders. He gets cut this past Monday. That I think is more an idea of, hey, we have our main guys. We've got Jefferson and Thielen and KJ Osborne. And we've got all these other younger guys, and Wilson's not a young guy, and we don't feel like we need this veteran presence or anything like that. So best of luck to Albert Wilson. 2 touchdown catches. Nice to know you. Good luck finding another job somewhere. And he probably will. He'll pick up with somebody on some roster because there aren't that many great wide receivers, and so you fill in with people who have some experience and can give you some reps out there on the field. So the Vikings will play the Denver Broncos in Denver on Saturday night at 8 o'clock. And, again, you're not going to see starters out there. You're not going to see those kinds of things. Really, the storyline will be, will Nick Mullins play, and what will we see out of him that will help define that he might very well be the backup quarterback. Again, a position we hope we don't have to worry about. Kirk Cousins, being as durable as he has been, but you want to have that. And to me, this is also a sign that the Vikings think, hey, we are a contender this year. Otherwise, why are you trading for a backup quarterback if you don't think that you have some kind of a chance, to make something happen here this season? So that remains to be seen. It'll be fun to watch, and we'll be ready to go for the regular season starting after this Saturday. Your Minnesota Twins, disappointing is the best word for this past week. It's tough because they sweep the Kansas City Royals. Hey, good. Now we're back on track. Now here we go. This is the way it's going to be. And then they lose 3 out of 4 to the Texas Rangers. And at home, of all places, you can always make a little bit of an excuse on the road. But when you're at home and you lose 3 out of 4 to a team that has fired their coach, fired their general manager, it just doesn't look good right now. Byron Buxton left Monday night's game, hip injuries. By the time you listen to this, probably it'll be a little more clear, though Rocco had talked about he certainly wouldn't play Tuesday, and the way he hinted he might miss the entire Houston Astros series with that hip tightness. This is looking like disaster mode right now. We talked about the games that they have to win to stay in contention, and now you're going to Houston, a team that swept you at home earlier in the season. And who are we throwing out there for pitchers? Well, Tuesday night was going to be Aaron Sanchez called up to do some duty. Dylan Bundy on Wednesday and Chris Archer on Thursday. Wow. Guys that you wouldn't expect to see in a playoff series if you ended up there and got to see the Houston Astros. But you're going to go try to win ball games down there against guys like Verlander and Valdez and Garcia, who are all having great seasons. And it's unbelievable. There just doesn't seem to be a passion. There doesn't seem to be an ability to hit a baseball when there's a runner on base. Their runners in scoring position average this year is well touted that it's just so bad. And, the one guy who seems to come through in situations is Jose Miranda, who's a rookie. But what are you going to do here? What are you going to do down the stretch? You're playing, the Houston Astros. That's not an easy game series there. You've got San Francisco and Boston coming up. Again, teams that are also fighting for their playoff lives. And how are you going to handle these sorts of situations? Cleveland not going away. The Chicago White Sox are not going away. And, you can't afford to fall that far back before you get to September and you're playing those teams in a hope that, hey, maybe we can get hot. Maybe we can make things happen against those teams when it really counts. They need to get people healthy. Obviously, Buxton needs to get healthy. Kyle Garlick sounds like he'll be back later this week. Another bench that can maybe hit a left-handed pitcher every now and then. But that consistency, there was an interesting article in the Star Tribune by Jim Suhan on Tuesday that talked about maybe Correa is playing himself into sticking with the Twins next year. Who's going to pay this guy the kind of money he's looking for when he's had a pretty subpar season? He's doing decent. He's doing fine. He's not doing $35 million worth. And I keep hearing about his leadership and everything. He's always out on the mound during pitching conferences. He talks to guys and they really like him. That's great. A leader's going to kick these guys in the rear end and get them going. A leader's going to show them how it's done. He's going to go out there and get big hits. It's frustrating when he'll have a 3-0 count. You should be dead red on a fastball down the middle of the plate, and he always lets it go. It's Joe Mauer-like almost. Swing the bat, hit the ball. Don't do things the way you've always done them because it's certainly not working right now. Do I sound frustrated? Of course I do. The Twins' pitching has been so much better lately, and that was the problem earlier. Now we can't hit. When Sonny Gray gives up 2 runs and you can't win a ball game and he takes the loss, that's frustrating. When Joe Ryan pitches well and you can't score runs, that's frustrating. What are you going to do? The Twins need to find solutions in a hurry. There's nobody sitting down in AAA that's going to come up and help them right now. They got to figure this out on their own. And I'm just afraid that when we meet again next week, we're going to talk about an even bigger deficit in the American League Central for your Minnesota Twins. And that's the state of Minnesota sports. And now it's time for This Week in Minnesota Sports History. On August 24th in 1980, manager Gene Mauch resigned after the Twins' 3-2 loss to Detroit. He was replaced by John Gorel in an interim role. Mauch went on, of course, to manage the California Angels for a while after that. In 1981, on August 24th, Ken Herbeck hit a home run in the 12th inning of his very first Major League Baseball game to give the Twins a 3-2 win over the Yankees in New York. In 1992, on August 24th, the Cleveland Browns had their worst preseason loss ever to our Vikings, 56-3. Not that it matters in the preseason, but that was a good sign for the Vikings that year. In 2018, on August 24th, the Twins lost to the A's, but Joe Mauer passed Rod Carew for second place on the all-time hits list for the Twins with hit number 2086. In first place sits Kirby Puckett. On August 25th, in 1967, Dean Chance threw his second no-hitter of the month in a 2-1 win over Cleveland, who actually scored a run on a wild pitch, of all things, after a runner had walked and there was an error. Of course, we look at it perhaps as a second no-hitter. Officially, the first one was not recognized. It only went 5 innings and then was called due to the weather. You have to pitch 9 innings to get credited with a no-hitter. In 1970, on August 25th, there was a bomb threat at Met Stadium during the Red Sox 1-0 win. During the time period when they had to put things on pause, fans gathered in the parking lot and also in center field of all places. On August 26th, in 1962, the Twins' Jack Kralik no-hit the Kansas City A's 1-0. The only run scored on a sacrifice fly for the Twins. The perfect game by Kralik was ruined by a 9th-inning walk, but that was the first ever no-hitter for the Twins. In 2021, on August 26th, the Red Sox' Chris Sale threw an immaculate inning in a 12-2 win over the Twins. Remember, an immaculate inning is 9 pitches all strikes, all strikeouts. The Twins, at that point, have been the only team in Major League Baseball to never be involved in one, so they finally were, but they and the Texas Rangers have never thrown an immaculate inning. On August 27th in 1975, the Twins' Craig Cusick tied a Major League Baseball record by being hit by pitch 3 times in a game in a 1-0 win in Milwaukee in 11 innings. There are a lot of people who share that record. On August 28th in 1976, Toronto beat the Minnesota Kicks to win the North American Soccer League Championship. Remember the Kicks? I do. I didn't pay much attention to soccer, but I remember them coming to New Ulm one time when I was young and getting some autographs and having no idea who these people were. In 2008, on August 28th, the Twins acquired relief pitcher John Rauch from Arizona. That was an exciting time. He was a pretty good reliever, filled that back end of the bullpen role, at least for a while. Also that date, sod installation was completed at Target Field as we started moving toward that 2010 opening day. On August 29th in 1961, the Twins won over 1 million fans for the year in their first season here in Minnesota in a 3-0 win over the Yankees. After the game, everybody could take their ticket stubs, put them in a big drum, and 3 of them were randomly drawn to give away new cars to celebrate 1 million fans. In 1996, on August 29th, the Twins traded Dave Hollins to the Mariners for David Ortiz. And of course, we would release Ortiz years later. Red Sox would pick him up, and now he's in the Hall of Fame. So the Mariners had a shot at him, too. In 2014, on August 29th, Trevor Plouffe hit a home run for the Twins in a 9-1 loss in Baltimore. However, the importance of that home run, it was the 10,000th home run if you combine the Minnesota Twins and the Washington Senators' history. On August 30th in 1987, Kirby Puckett went 6 for 6 against the Brewers in a 10-6 win. He set a Major League Baseball record with 10 hits in 2 games. I remember watching those games on TV back in the time when we didn't really get a chance to watch a lot of the Twins on television. On August 30th in 2007, the official groundbreaking for Target Field. Shovels in the ground. An exciting time in Minnesota. For our local listeners, this week in Richland, Heartland, Ellendale, Geneva sports, it's fun to say that again. We have some events for our student athletes. On August 26th, cross country will start the season at Faribault. Welcome to new cross country coach and band director Colin Zidlicki. He has taken over that program. And August 30th, the volleyball team will be at Alden Conger. Welcome to Ashley Toltzman. She is the new varsity volleyball coach at NRHEG. Don't forget, when we get to the home games, we'll talk about the streaming services where you can watch and, if you want, listen to the Waffle Flipper, give you a little play-by-play as well. Well, that'll do it for another helping of waffles here at 365sportscast.com. I'm glad you decided to spend an hour here with me, and I hope you'll continue to tune in each Wednesday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. If you can't catch the original broadcast, each week's episode replays every evening on 365sportscast.com. Don't forget you can download the app for your phone as well and listen wherever you are. Show is also archived to YouTube and Spotify. Remember, if you have some thoughts, if you think you might make a good guest on the show, waffleflipper22@gmail.com or message me on Twitter at Mr. D1973. Next week, we'll dive back into the world of Minnesota sports. The Gophers will be getting ready for their season opener in Minneapolis. The Vikings will be closing in on theirs as well, and the Twins will be gearing up for the stretch run as we head towards September. I'll have another special guest to delve into all that and more. Thanks again for joining me. This is Mark Domeyer, signing off with Syrup.